Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We'll get started in just a couple of seconds. We want to make sure we give everyone a chance to get logged in and settled. So we'll be back in just a couple of seconds. Okay, well, hopefully everyone is settled in. Let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from or whenever you may be joining us for our on-demand viewers. My name is Andrea Thomas. I'm part of the marketing team here at SystemSoft Technologies. And on behalf of SystemSoft and our speakers today, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us. During our time together, we're going to take a journey back to 2020 and explore how a CDFI leveraged technology, agility, and a can-do attitude to really help connect their communities and local businesses to federal funding and the economic impacting fight against COVID. And we found that community leaders across the country are struggling with how best to get available funding in the hands of individuals that need it and need it now, all while maintaining compliance with the important regulatory requirements associated with those funds. The good news, with no-code technology and the right partners, there is a way. And we're going to share that story with you today and help you start on your own path to help get these funds in your communities. We are reserving some time today after our agenda here for a question and answer session. And you can submit questions you may have at any time during the webinar simply by posting them in the small window below. So as we prepare for today's journey, I'd like to first introduce you to our guides. First, we have Mr. Cal First, SystemSoft Vice President of Technology Development and Integration Practice. Cal, can you give us a quick introduction, please?
Sure, thank you, Andrea. Yeah, as Andrea said, my name is Cal. I was actually principally involved in the installations here involving the CDFIs. And I have about 10 years of experience in total in no-code and low-code development, and about 20 years of overall technology experience. And I look forward to sharing our experience of last year and the coming year here in a few minutes.
Thank you, Cal. I appreciate it. Also joining us today is Mr. Stephen Moritz, SystemSoft's Chief Digital Officer. Steve, do you want to give a quick introduction and then dive into our story?
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for being with us today. We certainly hope to use your time wisely, knowing how valuable it is. As Andrea mentioned, my name is Steve Moritz, and I serve as SystemSoft Technologies Chief Digital Officer. And simply stated, my job is to design, develop, and deliver digital services for our customers and to help them think about innovative and transformative ways to bring new services, better engagement, more automation, more collaboration, and ultimately better results, whether it's a quasi-public organization, like SBA, 7A lenders, or CDFIs, commercial organizations and municipalities. And it's really in that spirit that we were given the chance as a firm to work with a specific CDFI. And as we'll address throughout the content today, we're really going to tell a story about two really important elements that came together to take kind of a difficult situation, as certainly we found 2020 to be, and kind of turn it into something that was productive and really valuable for a community that really needed it, right? So I think, we all had many struggles individually, organizationally, and I'm sure all of you have heard reference to 2020 as the proverbial dumpster fire, right? So therefore, right, the cute little graphics. Well, but again, we're going to kind of paint this conversation today in a very optimistic tone. So I kind of like a quote as it pertains to dumpster fires, which of course are bad things. But the good news is that like most dumpster fires, at least we have it contained. So we're really going to talk about kind of how we contained and how we kind of helped drive a situation for a particular client that really was dealing with 4 very significant challenges. And I'll work through them quickly because candidly, I really want to hand the microphone to Cal as quickly as possible. And Cal will tell you, this real life story about no code platforms and how we used it with a really innovative and courageous CDFI. But what they were confronting when we talk about uncertainty, and I think all of these challenges are incredibly relevant, especially right now, right? So when we talk about uncertainty, you all may be aware that there is a 590-page bill that was approved by the House Budget Committee, and it's advanced to the full House for $1.9 trillion of funding. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty in kind of the carpet fiber details of how actually those funds are going to flow and where they're going to flow to. And of course, this is not a symposium on that bill per se, but suffice it to say, there's still and will be so throughout the process of getting the legislation crafted, and certainly thereafter a lot of uncertainty. As we think about the complexity that occurred in 2020 with funding tranches and the rules, again, let me kind of put a contemporary spin on it. What we do know is, there are so many different types of financial instruments, and that, of course, was pertinent in 2020 and will continue to be so in 2021. In fact, the list will get broader as we talk about PPP loans, COVID-19 EIDLs, we have express bridges, SBA debt relief, and each one of these instruments have their own rules, different qualification criteria, how they're to be processed, what the compliance requirements are going to look like. It's an incredibly complicated world, and we know a lot of our clients have shied away from kind of wading into these waters. And again, we'll tell a story about how perhaps that perspective can change, just having confidence that this has been done before and you have the right kind of technology. Let me move quickly to speed. And as an example, our new president announced actually it was just yesterday that there are a number of changes for how PP loans will be processed, and those changes have to be in effect tomorrow, right? And so there will then be a 14-day window for businesses with less than 20 employees to kind of be elevated in the prioritization of current and new tranches of funding. I mean, that's an incredibly difficult challenge, right? When you start talking about moving the goalposts, if you will, changing the rules of the game, and doing it with basically a little over 24 hours. And then last is around compliance. We know that as these tranches of funds become available, the overall intent, which of course is in supporting the public, supporting financial distress, but ultimately there are political influences, and there are certainly a number of factors that arise from compliance. And so, we know that new SBA challenges require documentation, especially around how funds are delivered. There are changes in the funding formula, and you have to have attribution as to how that was handled. There are certainly certain exclusions for a number of new exclusions now in terms of who can qualify for the funds. Is now being extended to folks who have non-fraud felonies, or folks who maybe had defaulted previously in student loans. And you may ask, why am I bringing that up as a compliance matter? Because what we've learned, and Cal will talk further about how the reporting and the compliance around who got the funds, who didn't get the funds, all of these different types of customers have to be tracked. And so that's a daunting exercise, but we'll talk about how that was accomplished. So again, I don't certainly want to steal the thunder of the story, but keep in mind, really is a wonderful aggregation of two things as we tell this real life story. And number one, it was about an organization that was bold, a small organization that was very bold, and then reached out to us saying that they wanted to move quickly. They were willing to look at the right kind of technology platform, and we'll talk about the no code platform and how that was a strong enabler for this courageous organization. And the other kind of component that's important to this story is having the right kind of partner, the right kind of engagement approach that understands how to drive through sprints and how to deliver, whether it's a front end applicant portal or it's the back end with the processing automation. So, again, this webinar is not a full commercial about SystemSoft technology, but we've aligned ourselves with these no-code platforms, and we're working with these innovative, courageous clients who really feel a burning desire to play a vital role in distributing funds to those who need it. And again, Cal will illuminate around how we were able to take kind of these requirements and to build a portal and do it incredibly rapid time frame. But as we did that, we knew that, again, we had to have the right kind of environment, because we knew that there would be feedback, there would be changes. And when you build a portal and you build a customer experience in 2 weeks, you're going to get feedback. And we had to kind of build that ability to iterate quickly. And then thereafter, we served as kind of a partner with the CDFI. We became their IT organization, to some extent, their marketing organization. And we had to get as close to the ever-changing business requirements as they were. Really was a wonderful combination of talent and creativity. But and because of that, we were able to really kind of stay current and kept changing the platform, whether it was how maybe the rules were evolving for applicant intake, or how we handled the back office processing through the funds distribution. And most importantly, there were a number of organizations outside of the CDFI, even outside of the particular municipalities themselves, that were involved in audit, in compliance monitoring, and we had to stay vigilant to ensure that the platform and solution we built could accommodate that. So enough of, I guess, a build up. I'm really going to kind of turn it over to Cal, who was really a key force in working with our client to drive this kind of accelerated timeline. And Cal, if you wouldn't mind, please kind of take over and let's kind of get down into the details.
Thanks, Dave. So diving right into this particular installation, I want to really preface it, and you're going to hear this repeated throughout the webinar today. It really takes three parties, three sets of capabilities to bring this together and make it a success the way it was. First is the right CDFI who can engage, rapidly deliver on requirements, work with those municipalities, counties, local governments to extract the appropriate pieces of information to deliver them to us as quickly as possible. It also takes a great team. We do have a great team here at SystemSoft Technologies, one that's able to adapt quickly and play a consultative role to make sure that we're in the weeds and putting together the right project plan, ultimately to ensure success. And the third component is, as Steve mentioned, is a no-code platform, in this case, the citizen developer platform, that was really at the center of the technology piece, that without the citizen developer platform, this would have been a task too far, for traditional code, through traditional means. So looking at what this particular CDFI here, in this case, it's HBDI, looking at what they're up against, on 6/28, they were engaging and signing a contract to distribute a grant locally for the county. They were also working to engage at the city level here and knew that was really coming about a month down the road. By 7/12, they wanted to have, the county wanted to have their portal launch. So if you look at that, that's going through 4th of July weekend, gives you about 10 calendar days, somewhere near 8, I think, working days to ultimately get that portal launched from the 6/28 signing period. And so what we had to do is we had to put together a two-phased approach here from a project plan, 2 phases per grant, and then 2 grants, ultimately in a multi-pronged project plan. The first part of the engagement was really focused on the applicant intake. It had to be done, an applicant intake portal had to be live on 7/12. And I am not exaggerating when I say new requirements were still coming in on 7/11 with new feedback. We were Sunday night at about 7 p.m. still getting new pieces of information, new requirements for the 7/12 launch for a portal that's going to take millions of hits in 11 hours time or so. Again, a feat that couldn't be accomplished through traditional code, not without putting the entire launch in jeopardy. So we were able to leverage that platform, take in the customized requirements, even in the 11th hour, ultimately launching the applicant intake portal on 7/12 with less than 2 weeks of effort. While the applicants were interacting with the portal, so the public is live in the portal submitting applications, we then went to work on the back-end distribution model. And so that was really the second phase of working with that specific county and engaged in a very complex distribution model. We're going to get to a couple of those details here coming up. But it allowed us to simultaneously, while intaking applications, ensuring that we're capturing the right pieces of data, spin up all the customization in the back end that really queued these, because it was not a first come, first serve portal. It really queued these up to the processors in the proper order. So that way, when the grant intake period ended 2 weeks later, then the processing of those applicants could begin by working with those who are reviewing and auditing said applications. And then, of course, future sprints can focus on ACH deposits and training sessions and other program requirements once those first two, that grant intake portal and the distribution portal, were handled on the front and back end. While that was going on, and while the team was ultimately processing all of the applications for the county, then the city became live. And the city repeated the exact same county cycle, again, first focusing on an intake portal, second focusing on the back-end distribution. And then you see there it goes into a long tail phase 3, where they're ultimately just delivering and making those deposits to bank accounts and following up on the long-term programs, training requirements, et cetera, that are mandated by the distribution model. So it was a unique way to attack a unique set of circumstances that allowed us to launch a front and a back end portal with basically a 10-day notice from the first contracting period. And when I say that, I want to make sure it's understood as not an exaggeration. We really had no warning before that. We truly plugged in on 6/28 and we're already on the ground running. There was nothing really before this that really prepared us. So ultimately, focusing first on that 10-day sprint to get that front end and back end portal ready for one grant distribution, quickly repeating that model for the second effort. Again, allowing a very small CDFI to do some very large work for their local community. So let's take a look at what this actually produced. So The average CDFI, this is 2020 numbers here. So in 2 weeks, they took 6.8 million page hits. And this is really powerful considering that these are numbers that typically grind portals to a halt when done with traditional development, no matter how tried and true and tested they are. You've all heard of crashes occurring because of page load and server issues. It wasn't the case here. In fact, again, processing requirements 11 hours before the launch and still launched without a hiccup. It was a really cool experience to be a part of working with Drew McLean over at Citizen Developer, and then his team, he's the CIO. His team's putting together charts and graphs because they're excited just to see what the load's going to look like. Not scared to death about the thing crashing. And it was a very cool experience, and again, very seamless, very smooth. Over 20,000 applications per process per grant. So that does not mean 20,000 awarded necessarily, but 20,000 grants making it through the entire process, being submitted, and then ultimately being reviewed and considered. $60 million in distribution through any particular grant. And ultimately, and most importantly, our job to make sure that in the end there are zero technology headaches. However, as smooth and as great as the experience was, and as rewarding as the experience was, it didn't come without some challenges. And so we did have an opportunity to learn a few lessons, primarily at the top. Complex intake questions can be difficult for small business owners to understand. Working in communities where first of all, English may not be the primary spoken language of a lot of small businesses who are in need of aid. We're trying to phrase questions in multiple languages to make sure they're understood. And again, these questions are not simple for a lot of small business owners. It certainly created some follow-up to have to occur to find out what was the real answer or the real intended answer when the user was interacting with the platform but gave a undesired result or an unexpected return. And ultimately that led to number 2, which was weeks spent going back and forth, backing up distribution. Remember, when you're not doing a first come, first serve model and your applications are being scored and their spots are being reserved, it really means if you're processing number 175 on the scoring list and funding could get exhausted, in the top 500, let's say, you ultimately need to either pause or reserve those funds for that number 175, even if there's an error on the application as you're tracking down to find out what might have caused a user error here and get at the real data to ultimately determine if this person's eligible or not. And so that time going back and forth with each and every one of these challenge scenarios, even though they were few, certainly added up to a lot of effort in the end and a lot of backed up queues. And then really looking at this last number here, 80% of the distribution effort was really spent in auditing and those queue backups, which is a huge number, right? So we really wanted to focus in on a way, what could we do to help eliminate the need for that 80% of the effort through the form of auditing and queue backup problems. So here's a poll question before we move into 2021. So that's 2020 in review. And we want to know, in 2020, did you pass on being an agent of distribution in the past, but you would love to change that in the future? Give everybody just a minute on that. All right, moving into 2021. So 2021 is really about taking a radical technology with a rapid customization and scalability and compliance and agility, but adding to it even a better experience in the form here of document processing. So in 2021, we're delivering a simpler user experience. So rather than leave fields up to interpretation as often as possible, we're going to leverage the top-end technologies that allow document processing to occur, analyze that document, make sure it's the proper document, extract data directly from that document. And if that document isn't available, ask for one or two other documents in its place, ultimately driving as much of the user experience through simple uploading of documents that already exist where we know the data is good, and again, validating and inspecting the document. Verification processes, leveraging machine learning to understand what valid user inputs would be to any particular question or any scanned document. And whenever an anomaly is received, and whenever we encounter an unexpected result, take the time to post back to the user and say, are you sure this is what you mean? Maybe a longer explanation of the question, and take a moment there to try to get that data verified properly at the first pass. Those validation techniques, of course, are really helping this auditing that would otherwise be occurring by hand. So it's detecting fraud, and then those other outliers, it's flagging them for the auditing team in advance. In most cases, it's already flagged them, as I said, to the user, and so the user knows to correct that data. But it's ultimately making sure that this is working center line down that 80% reduction in effort that can be achieved if we just simply make sure that we have valid, non-fraudulent data at the very first pass. And last on the list, of course, taking automation to the next level. Last year, we did have a fully automated process. We're really automating that automation, and we're pushing forward the work stream we talked about above to have that simple processing and verification and validation occurring, and then making sure that on the backside there are as few human touch points as possible, all the way and including into the deposit into the bank account, and even follow-ups for the long tail efforts if any other future activities are warranted by the particular grant. But wait, there's more. For those of you who remember the Chia Pet commercials, we always sound like that a little bit, but there really is more, and this is really important. Not only does the engagement in the no-code grant portal put you in a position to be able to be a hero of the community, to be able to step up and deliver through a centralized technology that's proven, but it also allows you to reduce cost savings. So the 2020 processing, in addition to the 2021 improvements that we've made, ultimately reduce that cost to process, you can see, by 586. That's for the $60 million in effort we were talking about before, down to 120,000, ultimately yielding in 465 savings per grant distributed, reaching that 79.5% cost reduction. So very, very powerful processing savings, through that 2021 new technology that we're looking to deliver. Lastly, I want to talk just for a moment here before we get into just a really brief demo of the platform. I want to talk about some of the no-code benefits, and we've mentioned that term a couple of times, but I really want to talk about what it is. So the Citizen Developer No-Code Platform, it's a platform that allows rapid development and agility the same way you would get by coding, but without having to write a single line of code. It's all driven through drag and drop interfaces, plain English commands. And the benefits of that, we talked a lot about the speed and agility, but it extends well beyond that. First of all, there's in the upper left corner, there's the unattainable speed. It's truly weeks to customize, not months or years. Second bullet point there, eliminate coding bugs, no endless and frustrating bug fixing. It's very important to know when you're typing lines of code, even where you're tapping into something that might be otherwise open source, you're configuring that through these particular lines of code where spelling mistakes or a mix-up of a variable or the simplest of problems can occur that can cause you endless bugs and endless frustration. This ultimately, by using the platform, it allows you to drag tested, tried and true blocks into place that don't contain those line level bugs. So that way, if you've got some kind of error, it's in simple English right before you, and I hope to demonstrate that here in just a moment, where you can see just by looking at the screen where any particular misprocessing may be occurring. We talked a little already about ready to be scalable out of the box with no crashes or slowdowns. So it's built on the latest technology stacks, serverless environments, Kubernetes environments that allow instant scaling and on-demand resource scaling. So no matter how high the demand, the resources just continue to increase with that demand to make sure there aren't any slowdowns. And that's all built into the platform inherently, without having to worry about any element of the configuration of an application causing a problem that would otherwise disrupt that scalability. Up at the top, fully customizable, no limits. Really want to exaggerate that. You can't come across a program requirements that we can't meet through utilizing the no-code platform to deliver your grant portal. If for any reason there's a requirement that can't be met, it's because it's impossible to meet. It's because more information is required, or there's simply an unknown or a flaw in the logic that would otherwise lead to that model. There's no customization problem or limitation of the code that ultimately would cause any issue, no matter how complex the requirements. Next significant cost reduction, we already went over that to the tune of, I believe it was almost $600,000 per grant. And last, rapid prototyping quickly shows any iteration requirements. Very important, because a lot of times, we may go into a build expecting one thing, deliver that exact thing, and then after looking at it, realize where some small tweaking and iteration is required. We were able to rapidly tweak this, and as Steve mentioned earlier, even getting feedback midstream, where we could reconfigure a little bit of the applicant intake, for example, do a quick overnight session, a couple hours at night, just to change a little bit of the intake portal in order to make it more user friendly. So next, we're going to play a quick demonstration. So this morning, I quickly walked through a demonstration of the no-code platform using one of the grant portals here, and so I'd like to play that at this time. It gives you it gives you a little bit of a preview of the grant portal, at least the makeup of that grant portal, and some of the complexities and rules for distribution. But more importantly, it demonstrates the tool and how easy it is to use the citizen developer platform to go in and configure the portal to a user's requirements. I'm currently logged into the grant portal as a developer, and I'm specifically looking at interfaces that are related to the back end.
Hi, everybody. We experienced some issues in providing the demonstration, but I think, Cal, if we're going to move on to the next slide, perhaps we can go back at a later time with the demo.
Yeah, that sounds appropriate. I apologize for the technical issues there, team. All right, Steve, back over to you.
Yeah. So thanks, Cal. And what Cal was actually about to show you, meaning the ability to quickly iterate the user interface, to build out what would be the front end to the grant application portal, as you were about to see and actually saw a little bit. It truly is a drag and drop exercise. And again, as Gal was mentioning, the no code platform and the citizen developer tool also abstracts the developers and of course the business leadership as well from some of the complexities of distributing digital capabilities across a number of formats, forms, and factors. Again, in a traditional development lifecycle with traditional tools, there is a significant amount of user acceptance testing, browser compatibility, and what is developed through the drag and drop actually then renders in an adaptive mode. So again, the ability to move quickly and deliver in weeks, not months, is achievable. And it's through that powerful platform that we were able to accomplish what Cal covered. But it's also why we have the confidence in creating what we call our quick strike engagement. And simply stated, it really is replicating the timeline that we went through today. And in roughly 2 weeks, we commit that if you are looking at a particular a tranche of funding and distribution, and you perhaps have been reluctant to engage and move forward just because of a lack of confidence, regardless of the quality and quantity of your technology team, in a short number of weeks specifically too. Let me quickly walk you through what we do with our clients in this quick strike engagement. As we mentioned from the outset, and certainly as Cal elaborated in the story that he told about HPDI and Harris County and the city of Houston, the requirements, of course, drive the process, drive the program, drive the portal, and drive the back-end processing. And so we call it week 0 in our quick strike. But what we're looking for is a dialogue and a workshop specific around what the requirements are for any particular tranche of funds distribution. And of course, we document everything. Of course, in the midst of COVID, we do all this work via digital portals. We produce a backlog document, gain consensus with our stakeholders, our clients, and we spend inordinate amount of time to get that done before we actually move into formal requirements. So as we move into week 1, we have that documented, we're then actually establishing the work plan, establishing the deliverables and the sequencing, and we put that in a project plan. We review that so that the leadership of the financial institutions we serve can get a sense of scope, timing, and sequencing. And then again, through the no-code technique, the drag and drop, the pre-tested blocks of code, the ability to scale into cloud settings, and of course, we are flexible as far as the major cloud platforms. We then put into production a grant portal or an intake portal, and we do that through the second week. Now, with that said, and as you certainly can, I think, surmise, there will be subsequent to the delivery of that intake portal. We would establish additional iterations as additional requirements may arise. We will always work with you based on the feedback of your applicants as far as how to improve the user interface and user experience. Additionally, what's not included in this quick strike is what would be the process automation as well as the reporting. But suffice it to say, the goal of our quick strike is to help our clients understand the power of the no-code platform. B, ensure that we have agreed to a scope that can be achieved. C, gives our clients the confidence in kind of this partnership model that we've discussed today to perhaps engage and immerse in tranches of funding that prior to the kind of work that we've described here, you just haven't been able to participate in. And as we've been working with the no-code platform and found these courageous heroes like HBDI, and we're finding more who truly want to serve the communities in of course where they live, and have heretofore just been unable, especially as it relates to some of the municipal driven funding. Again, if you remember from the early conversations in this webinar, where the challenges are just so pervasive, spanning uncertainty, complexity, the critical speed to deliver, and then the subsequent compliance requirements. So that's our quick strike. I'm going to turn it back to Cal to give you a little bit of an update as far as some of the upcoming activities, and then we'll looks like we've actually fortunately given ourselves a little bit of time for Q&A as well.
Thanks, Steve. So first, I wanted to circle back on the poll, and it relates directly to what is coming next. So the poll results showed that 50% of the attendees actually passed on the distribution of 2020 grants, but would like to be involved in 2021. So any of these touch points that we have on the screen that I'm going to talk through, if they're of interest to you or related to your 2021 goals, we'd certainly love to hear from you. And then another 25% did participate in 2021 funding distribution, but encountered issues with processing and compliance. So that's really 75% of the audience that had either had to pass or had encountered some relatively intense challenges. So focusing on the upcoming events here and where you might want to spend a little bit of time, we're going to be doing an upcoming case study here focused on some local heroes who did step up and who worked with us directly, and you can hear directly from them, hear their story of what it was like to work with us and use the grant portal in order to distribute their particular initiatives. Doing small segments to demonstrate specific no-code platform elements. So unfortunately, the video did not process correctly here. I apologize for the technical issue, but we will be following up with emails and also try to embed that into the recording of the webinar. So if you do want to see this first demonstration, feel free to tune in and keep your eye on your inbox there for updates. But it can start to focus in on some of the advantages of the no-code platform that you may not otherwise be aware and exactly how it achieves it. These are short segments, really 15 to 30 minutes, really talking maybe for example, all about compliance or all about reporting, as some of you encountered issues with those particular sets of challenges. And we'd also love to hear from you. Feel free to email us or reach out directly in any way to let us know what challenges you faced and what you'd like to hear more about in any of those short sessions. And lastly, if there's any interest in lunch and learn workshops, if you'd like to participate and do a smaller focused workshop with a smaller intimate setting where we can go through and again through live demonstration as well as configuration and explore a little further on how not only the grant portal and system developer platform may work for you, but also we would be happy to explore any topics or any challenges that might face your organization. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and get into questions for Steve and myself.
Thank you so much, Steve and Cal. Such a great story that you've shared with our audience today, and appreciate you doing that. Also want to acknowledge our poll participants for their participation in those polls. And we do have some questions from our audience, so I'll go ahead and get that started. So the first question here is about the portal. Is it specific to any particular grant? What about loans and loan workflows?
Sure, I'll field that, and then I'll let Steve chime on here if he wants to add anything. It is definitely not designed specifically just for grants. It could be grants or loans, and it also is not designed to have to be specific to any particular type of grant or distribution methodology. No matter the custom requirements, we're certainly happy to review all of those requirements and then put together an easy to use and easy to distribute, in again a compliant, safe manner, regardless of the of any requirements there may be.
Yeah, and Cal, let me give you an example to that. So as our client was distributing grants, there were multiple distributions to the applicants, of course, those who qualified. And as an example, to receive the second and final funding round, applicants had to go through education sessions. And to Cal's point, even though this was a grant, the portal was iterated to accommodate and deliver those training sessions to track attendance, and all of that processing complexity was kind of folded into the portal and the workflow, and literally it was done within days. And certainly when we get beyond grants and our clients move into lending, then of course, receiving payback and payments, payoff amounts, there of course become, a diverse and expanding set of functions that have to be accommodated as you get from grants into loans. And, while we work with a number of lending scenarios, we obviously haven't gotten into, and that hasn't been the axis of this story, but the no-code platform and the citizen developer tool, does give us confidence that, any complexity in, say, lending products can be accommodated. And again, we're talking about rapid timeframes and weeks to deploy, not months or years.
Thank you. So our next question, do you have audit trails to track all activity?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's a mainstay of any deployment to make sure that we have audit trails that track any timestamped information related to any authenticated or non-authenticated user. So you can look at that at a field level and understand the audit trail of any particular user, any particular piece of information, what was changed from, what it was changed to, when it was changed, and ultimately who changed it. Even including systematic changes, where the system may have gone through and processed some type of data. It does track itself in that way as well. It's a necessity for a lot of forms of of compliance, and you may be even asked for this by anybody that you're processing a grant on behalf of. So we do support you fully there.
And again, thanks, Cal. I'll do a quick build. The term and the question around compliance, we certainly learned, and candidly, we didn't expect that compliance would be as critical as it turned out to be, and as we now know it is. But let me add a second dimension to this term compliance, addition to what Cal covered. What we found is that our HBDI client and the CDFIs we work with, not only, of course, have to show compliance, say, to processing integrity or how the algorithms were used in terms of determining prioritization and validating fulfillment of who got grants and did the ACH transactions flow as intended. But the second component of compliance is really about user experience. Let me very briefly explain what I mean. The funding organization, the municipalities that were really routing the dollars to our CDFI clients, were very interested in where the actual applicants may have struggled in the user experience, or where did they fail to qualify. So in a sense, there was as much interest in understanding, if someone was challenged or there was a high proportion of user experience where there was a challenge around a particular question or the submission of a particular document, understanding and putting into categories who was maybe never completed the application, but those who did. And so those kind of became compliance questions. And again, it was the environment, the ability to kind of spin up databases without needing DBAs that allowed us to kind of respond to our clients and those that were overseeing these distributions, not just in the traditional compliance around protecting, of course, financial information, but also kind of compliance around the overall user experience itself. So it was really interesting that we ended up in that as well. Any other questions, Andrea?
One more question. Looking for a little more flavor on processing several grants at a time. Is it possible, and how does the portal support that?
Yeah, I can field that from the technical viewpoint. So ultimately, the experience for your staff needs to be a seamless one, where you may have any number of auditors or managers or people who might ultimately be reviewing grants, anybody who is involved in the actual funding distribution as well, but ultimately keeping them all in their role and getting any, regardless of whether you're processing 1 or 10 grants at a time, making sure that we funnel that into that individual's queue for processing, where they're not having to jump in and out of 10 different applications or work 10 different work queues just because there are 10 grants being processed. So we do look to deliver that in a in a fashion that does allow for the simultaneous processing of grants with as little stress on your staff as possible, and again, as highly of a configurable backend as necessary. It's not important that these grants collect the same types of information. It's not even important that they have to follow the same workflow. They ultimately can still be funneled to individuals who are involved in different points of the workflow in a seamless way that allows them to keep processing in stride.
Yeah, and just a quick build to that as well. So, many CDFIs are dealing with a number of different types of grants, and those are different funding tranches. Those funding tranches could be for grants, could be for, say, EIDL loans, express bridges, etc. And to again be transparent, the work that we did in this case with HBDI didn't certainly take their workload down to zero. In fact, there was a lot of work that, in this case, a team of 9 people was the backbone of handling these $60 million worth of funding activities. But the point to be made here, and kind of around the question of can we do multiple grants, is because of the ability through the platform and the engagement style to automate as much as we did, whether that's improving and automating the front end. Cal talked about improving on the intelligent document processing. We continually improve the sophistication and the comprehensiveness of the processing of the back end, right? Or the automation of the processes around the underwriting, the evaluation, the distribution, and the reporting. Then by bringing that work level down on a per grant or per dollar basis, what it entitled this particular client to do was, after they worked through Harris County, is to feel confident that that staff could scale, even though, of course, they weren't adding people to handle Harris County. And so ultimately, what we've described here, of course, is a pretty cool and sophisticated technology, but it's really about giving our clients the confidence to scale, whether that's taking on new jurisdictions or handling different types of financial products. And the reason is because there's a reduction of the labor intensity on a per grant, per loan, per dollar basis that gave them that confidence. So that's, I'll turn it back to you, Andrea, as we are very close to the end of our timing.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. That is all the time we have for Q&A. For those that submitted questions that we didn't get a chance to answer today, we will reach out to you to try to provide that answer to your question. In the meantime, feel free to check out our website for more information of what's coming up. You can certainly reach out to Cal and to Steve. I'm sure they're happy to address your questions as well. And again, thank you for joining us today. We do hope you found the webinar helpful, found it insightful, and we hope to connect with you again soon at one of these upcoming events. Thank you so much.